U.S. history students, Ms. Hession. All right, the Great Depression was a little depressing to talking about. So let's talk about something a little more positive. War! Okay, that's not as positive, but it's World War II that gets us out of the Great Depression economically and also catapults the United States into the world stage, top of the world stage that we know it today. So let's go backtrack before we really sink our teeth into World War II. So we're looking at the PowerPoint that I attached to this. So the U.S. policy, foreign policy after World War I was one of neutrality and isolationism. Okay, limited interactions with European countries and other countries as far as economic trade and also political dealings. So the United States after World War One is like, you know what, you got problems. You fix them yourself, and when you're ready, come back to us. So the United States stays out of global affairs for the most part after World War One, after seeing how awful that battle was. And remember, it was not called World War One; it was called the Great War. So it wasn't two yet. So the United States wanted to focus on the United States only, and that's pretty much it. So shockingly, Europe goes back to war again. In global, you learned about the Germany being hammered with sanctions and war penalties, and that kind of like created a lot of bad blood. And Hitler emerges from Germany's ashes and kind of is like a rallying cry for the German people. And over time, the Hitler gains a lot of power and pretty much becomes a chancellor in many ways. So, and that was not what the German government was set up to be. It was supposed to be very similar to a republic style of government. And one of the things that we see that Hitler was all about promoting himself, promoting the Nazi Party, promoting the Nazis, the German people. And the biggest display of all was in the Olympics a few years prior to outbreak of war. So Hitler, getting back to steps through World War II, Hitler invades Poland, and that's when other European countries start getting involved. Okay, they thought that if you gave Hitler a little bit, he would stop. Okay, Germany is not capable of really destroying the European continent anymore. Now they were wrong. So the United States tried very hard again to stay out of it, but we don't really stay out of it like we didn't stay out of World War I. It's called the Lend-Lease Act. So the United States would sell or lease war materials such as bullets. I mean, you lend a bullet, you're not getting it back, let's be real. But the president, FDR, saw that the United States would be a manufacturing for an arsenal for democracy, as he would put it, for the Allied powers over in Europe. That would include France and Great Britain. So it would not do any business dealings with Germany or Italy. All right, and then the war goes on for several years before the U.S. formally gets involved. Okay, and that involvement starts off with Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, surprise attack, attack on the Pacific Fleet, killed a lot of sailors, wounded many more. And pretty much our entire Pacific Fleet was destroyed. And it's an embarrassment for the U.S. Navy, embarrassment for the U.S. government. There were some ships that did happen to survive that were off shore in Hawaii. And the scary part about Pearl Harbor, as you see some of the images there, is that there was no real defense of the United States. The estimates were that if the Japanese army were to invade California, the United States Army and military would not have been able to put up a legitimate fight till at least Kansas. which is a very scary thought. That's how destructive losing the Pacific Fleet was. Now, obviously, ships from the Atlantic corridor were going to be moved over via the Panama Canal. Where I talked about that. That was one of the last things I told you in person. Via the Panama Canal through and give support. But in the meantime, the United States found itself at war. FDR on December 8th, the next day, called Pearl Harbor a day that will live in infamy. And it's kind of a rallying cry for the Americans. And remember, the president cannot declare war. He requests military action and requests war from Congress, and Congress obliges. The United States declares war on Japan, and then Germany actually declares war on us because they were allies with Japan. So now the United States got to fight a war on the Pacific theater and in the European theater, thus dividing up the U.S. military. So we're going to need some soldiers. And the United States is going to team up with notably Great Britain in this fight. France did have a resistance army going. They had already fallen to Hitler. But we see a true world war. And this is, as you see on the map there, we are actually allies with the Soviet Union because, well, Hitler decided to pick a fight with them as well, which was not a very smart move on his part. But we see that the United States is going up against a very formidable army, and it's going to require a lot of manpower, a lot of people at home doing the right thing, making sacrifices. I want to show you some videos of life during World War II, expectations. So the United States engages in World War II, and it's a very big moment in the world's history. And just throwing it out there, it wasn't a guarantee that we would be successful. We had a lot of early setbacks in the beginning of that war. But what's great about Americans is perseverance. And that's lessons that we can take from our modern times today. We got to persevere, we got to stay strong, and stay positive. That is the most important thing that we need to do. So we'll be looking at World War II. Remember, your DBQ is due tomorrow. And listen, have a great day. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below.